Good afternoon and welcome to the Great Sober Sex Forum. My name is Mikas and I am an alcoholic. Actually, I'm an alcoholic who likes to shoot meth alcoholically. That's really what's up for me in my addiction. Are there any other alcoholics here or addicts? Great. Why don't we go around the room and just start to introduce ourselves? Starting here.
My name is Eddie and I'm a grateful alcoholic addict.
Right on.
I'm Richard, I'm an alcoholic.
Stephen Pett.
Food. You don't even have to say that.
Where's Keith?
Right on. Welcome, Keith.
Danny, crystal meth addict.
Danny.
James, alcoholic.
James.
Omar, crystal meth addict. And Dale, crystal meth addict.
Welcome, everybody. And welcome to all the members that are listening to us online or on the YouTube channel for Indulgent Abstainers. You're all very, very welcome. It's so glad that you can tune in to us. And we're doing this here in Los Angeles, and it's great to know that what we're saying today is getting out to you and wherever the heck you are today. So welcome to you all. Why don't we start with the Serenity Prayer? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Okay, so the purpose of the Great Sober Sex Forum is what I've kind of noticed in my own life and in my own sobriety is sex is one of those subjects that's not often discussed. And if it is, I mean, sometimes we have sex and sobriety meetings, but they're just that. They're meetings where you kind of go and you share a one-sided sort of monologue of what's going on with you. And when it comes to this whole sex and sobriety thing, I think that really a dialogue is what's necessary. So I wanted to come up with a workshop or a forum so that we'd have a place to be able to dialogue all of the different things. I know for myself, coming off of crystal meth and all of the sex and drugs that were put together with crystal meth, and for me to extract the meth part of it, which just left me with sober sex, which I didn't understand. I had a lot of questions. I was very, very fortunate that I had a sponsor that told me, go fuck your brains out sober. This is the only way you're going to find out what you like is to actually do it sober.
I have a question.
Yes?
Before you do all the substances,
Yeah.
like you went out and finished it, and then later on you start using the substance.
Yeah.
Did it change a different perception of your sexual views and stuff? And then later on you got sober again. Was it a different experience? Like what went back to the original way of doing sexual life?
Yeah, so I think that my crystal meth use expanded my sexual limits for sure. Some into areas that I don't do anymore. There were certain activities that I really thought was amazing, and now that I'm sober, not so much. But there were also things like fisting. I never got into that. I thought that was the wackos. And in sobriety, I've done a fisting 101 seminar, like a whole fucking a day-long hands-on, hands-in seminar, and I really found out that I am into that. So the journey has been one that the drugs certainly expanded things for me. I was able to get over my initial fears of things and do things that I wouldn't have normally done on the drugs. But getting sober, then my sponsor was very, very adamant about you need to figure out what it is that you actually enjoyed, sober. Try those things and see which ones that you want to keep moving forward, because that's the only way you can do it. So, yeah. So each Sober Sex Forum, we try to have a topic, and the topic of this one I thought would be relationships, open relationships, and polyamorous relationships. I don't know anything about polyamorous relationships, so if you guys have any information about that, that would be great. And polyamorous is a relationship between people that's more than two. So like three ways that are permanent. Yeah. So it's
Do you mean 3 ways or 3 people in a relationship?
3 people in a relationship.
But it starts as a 3
Oh,
That's
okay.
right, yeah. but it's like there's some sort of equality there, and
When I worked on a cruise ship, there was like this threesome couple.
Yeah.
Guys, they always came on
Yeah.
one room. Like,
Right.
really fun.
Yeah, polyamorous. There you go.
Yeah.
And so and our 2 speakers are going to kind of discuss their journey between relationships and open relationships, and just what they're kind of learning about themselves. And this is for us to just kind of be able to share, but it's also for you guys to also be able to share as well. So after the speakers, we'll have a question and answer period, and if you have questions for them regarding something that they said in their share, please ask. If you don't have anything, but you just like to sort of check in and tell the group where you currently are at, and just kind of become part of the group in that sense, that would be a lovely time to do that. And then the very last portion of the day, we'll have, I got like the little bullet point questions to sort of take the relationship stuff, and it's just a list of questions to just throw out to the group to kind of keep conversation kind of going. So we got 2 speakers today. This is Dale Greiner, Eddie Mulliken. Oh. Yeah, there went an interview right out the window. Okay, and Eddie M. Dale has been sober for 12 years. He's on the National Board of Trustees for CMA. Dale has always been a driving force ever since I've been coming down here from San Francisco. Dale's been a driving force of CMA and recovery, a pillar of the community here in LA. And I noticed that, and I saw that right off the bat, and I'm like, that's somebody I need to know. Eddie, on the other hand, is somebody that we met online. I don't remember if it was Facebook or we gravitated to Facebook or.
It was.
Yeah.
I think it was BBRT first.
First, okay, yes, that's what I was thinking.
You were blonde.
And but one of the great things about our friendship, and we've never actually done it. but we had all this wonderful flirtation on BBRT. But the thing about his profile and my profiles, it was the sobriety was right there in both profiles, which made it which made, I think, me gravitate to him and him gravitate to me, and that was always something that was in the forefront of our conversation, because that's reality for us. So Eddie's also got a show on YouTube called The Eddie Mulliken Show.
It's not called the Eddie Mulliken Show. It's called the Eddie Show.
The Eddie Show.
It's just a little hobby. It's just
All right.
a hobby.
You're a YouTube star.
Well, not
All right, and Eddie's just moved here from the desert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I moved to LA, I lived in LA in the 90s, and then had to get my shit together. So I left for the desert for 9 years, and then I came back a year ago. Just because, I was in the desert for 9 years. It's the desert. So.
Well, welcome back.
Well, thank you.
So the format for today is, I'm going to open this up and then I'll do a little icebreaker story from now until 2:50, and then from 2:45. Wow, so how did I get this times all straight up? So around 3:10, the first speaker will finish. Around 3:30, the second speaker will finish, and then we will take a break for 15 minutes. And when we come back, we'll have a panel Q&A where you can ask them specific stuff about their journey, their road, and or just check in and just where you're at, and kind of let the group know what's going on for you and what you've got concerns or troubles with, or and some we can all just kind of back and forth it. Then we'll go into from 4:30 to 5:25 the topic discussion. And if it goes the full hour, great. If it doesn't, we'll end a little early. That's how we'll just naturally see how we naturally unravel. Then we'll wrap up and close. Housekeeping. There's the basket here. It's suggested $10 donation, and that's to help pay our rent here at the AT Center, who's gracious to host us. And I know that they're actually having a little bit of a hard time. So if people are regular AT Center supporters, please come back. If you're not, please start this. This is a great center for sobriety, and there's a lot of great meetings here. You can check the schedule on your way out. So please don't be shy. That's, when it comes to talking about sex and it comes to opening ourselves up in front of people, the three things in sobriety, the honesty, open-minded, and willingness, those things apply in a meeting or a process like this. It's like, everything is a process. Moving forward in our sobriety is a process. But those three things I think are really key. The willingness to be honest, to really, really kind of dig down deep and say, this is what's happening for me, or this is where I'm fearful, or this is what I want, and yet this is not what I'm getting. But I really being able to state honestly who and where you are and what you want. And then open-minded, just know that, we've all got different journeys. Everybody's completely, is 12 different people here, so everybody's got 12 different journeys, 12 different roads that we've all walked. And some people, might have a situation that's a little bit different than yours and that you don't want. And some people, you might have information, they might have stuff that you want. And then willingness, willingness is just that, the willingness to speak up, the willingness to move forward, the willingness to actually take action on the things that you find about yourself, the willingness to be honest, just that willingness to actually show up today. So I applaud all of you actually for showing up, because that's the first step in, having a great, vibrant, sober sex life, which is the goal here. There's no limit to what you can talk about regarding sex. I know some meetings are like, if you stray off top, if you get too, no. Obviously, glorifying the drug use, you guys know, right? I mean, this is about sober sex, not about drug sex, but we can talk about that. And if you get triggered, if a trigger happens to come up, there just so happens to be a sex and sobriety meeting at 6 o'clock here afterwards, which you can kind of decompress and kind of, just stick around the center and, just allow yourself, because triggers are right, they're just feelings that come up. But as we all know, feelings pass, they fall over. This too shall pass. So, if you find that you have any sort of aversion when the meeting's over, just hang out and let it pass. Let it pass on its own. Obviously, what you hear here, you got to keep it here, right? Because we're all trusting each other, and to be able to be honest and raw, we've got to be able to be to know that people aren't going to share our business. There's a 6 o'clock meeting I already talked about. So is everybody clear? Yeah? All right. This is my little icebreaker story. Okay, so, and I tell this just to sort of just set the mood for the amount of just rawness to it. So I went to this communion party last night, and I'm versatile, and I was hoping that there'd be I'd get fucked at this party, because I have a part-time job doing escorting, and in that job, I'm a top mostly. So it's kind of nice when you get to go someplace and you get to be the bottom, and that just makes it a lot of fun for me. So I cleaned out a little early, I think, and by the time I got to this meeting, maybe to the party, I had to go to the bathroom. And I went actually with a member of the group who I thought was going to be here, but he didn't show up today. And I said, dude, do me a favor, just hand me the bulb douche thing over just refill it and hand it to me, and refill it and hand it to me a couple times, so I could see if I could actually get could actually get cleaned out while in the little public bathroom, and it just wasn't going to happen. It just there was that reality wasn't meant to happen last night. So going from the whole okay, so the reality is, thank God you're first, because that's not happening. That's really not it. And just to backtrack a little bit about the escorting stuff. So I had this when I first got sober. One of the things I really discovered while doing through my 4th step and doing through my fear inventory was that I had a huge fear that I was inadequate, that I was less than, that I was not good enough or big enough to be a top. I didn't think that I actually had what it took to be a top of the type that I was going after online, right? So I turned into this total meth whore bottom. And that was I used meth in a way that allowed me to be the best possible bottom that I could be, because I didn't think that I was able to be the top. Even though before I started sex, I actually had a lot of topness to me. But once I was like, shit, but I'm not what everybody wants. And so I built up this idea in my head, which while doing a 4th step, I recognized, wow, this is untrue thinking. This is not necessarily so. Yes, for some people it is so. I am not big enough. But for many, many other people, that's not true thinking. And so I kind of really had to get over it. And so the first step was I went online and I changed my profiles to top versatile. And I started getting like, wow, I got a lot of hits, and that was amazing. And so then the next thing for me was like, I wonder if people would actually pay for this. Because, if they'll pay for it, then I can't deny it, and sure enough, I put these escort ads out there, and sure enough, they paid for it, and I was just like, son of a bitch, so it's just not true. I mean, it was like that's what it took for me to really get to the idea that that's just not true. Who I am is not who I think I am. Who I am is just me. So that was how that happened, and luckily, that there was a skill that once you kind of get that skill, luckily I still had it, because when I got out of this motorcycle accident, I mean, I couldn't work, my leg was all fucked up and everything, but that was one of the very first things I was able to do, because for 2 hours worth of doing what you do, you actually get a little sizable chunk of change. And so for me, that turned into a little part-time gig. It's not my life's aspiration, but I have no negativity towards it. I see it as something that when somebody hires me, they don't know what they're hiring, but when I show up, all of me, the entirety of me shows up. Not just my cock, not just my ass, but the entirety of me shows up. And an actual communication, an actual relationship, an actual sharing of persons sort of happens. So that's that. So who would like to speak first? I didn't ask you guys. Okay, so please help me introduce Dale.
Hey, my name's Dale, and I'm an alcoholic and a crystal meth addict.
Hey, Dale.
Hey, Dale.
Thanks, Nikas, for asking me to come out. I definitely have a story that, is a journey through my own sexual discovery in sobriety that, for me, transformed me and transformed a lot of my thinking. Because like you, I had created personas while I was using, I created fantasies while I was using, I created all kinds of things that once I was sober, I wasn't sure were real, because my thinking wasn't clear when I was using crystal meth. It just wasn't. And I became a drug dealer, which wasn't a good idea. I became homeless, which wasn't a good idea. I mean, I did a lot of things that weren't good ideas. So I had to go back and really look at all the stuff that I'd done and all the decisions I'd made and all the ideas I had about myself and redefine them. And it was great, because like you, I had a sponsor who was like, really go and explore who you are, stay sober, call me if you're triggered, stay close to the program. I went to a meeting every day for my first 7 years. I mean, I was really in the program. And yet I was also willing to sort of not listen to the chatter, about people who were like, oh, you can't have sex in your first year, and da-da-da-da, because, I mean, that didn't make sense either. And there's certainly no research or anything that tells anyone that that's a good practice. And there's lots of anecdotal evidence that it's a negative practice, that it might not be good. And so what I had to do was figure out what was right for me. And for some people, it is a good idea to stay away from sex, but for me, it wasn't. And I had to sort of figure out what was going on with me, because when I was using, I had HIV, I was running around having unprotected sex. I know that I infected people. I know that I was absolutely unaccountable to my behavior when I was using. And I did things I will never do now, but I was what I am when I use is a self-justifying machine. I justify what I want to get what I want. And that's what I did. And so I had to really do that, what we do in the 4-step, really look at my sexual inventory. And I love that we get to do a sexual inventory that is not judgmental, that is not sex negative, that is not, trying to condemn us or trying to marginalize our behavior. It's just saying very simply, is it selfish? Is it dishonest? Is it harmful? Is it, is it any of those things that creates more negativity in the world than love in the world? And what I want to do today is create a greater amount of love in the world, create a greater amount of good in the world. And I wasn't doing that when I was using. I mean, it's just, I think about, the sort of unfeeling and the just, I remember one story. I was at the bathhouse and I was there with a guy and I went to go get some gin. I brought it back and he drank the whole thing and I was like, well, I just left him there. And come to find out, he went into some sort of hole, of course, I knew he would, that's why I left. And it ended up, he just got raped multiply there and just was horrible and had a horrible, and then, I was just like, well, tough luck for you. That was how I felt about it. Today I would have sort of stayed there and made sure he was okay or made sure his door was locked or do something, but I wouldn't do that then. I was only concerned with me. I was only concerned with if I was getting off or I was getting what I wanted or I got the drugs I wanted or, if I had the drugs, I'd make you do what I wanted you to do. You know what I mean? It was just selfish, self-centered behavior. And I really had to put everything I do today through that prism. Is it selfish? Is it self-centered? Am I just thinking of myself? And my sponsor really led me through that process of understanding that, so that when I did engage sexually, am I being obsessive? Am I being compulsive? Am I really just, trying to, get what I want and bone out? You know what I mean? And so that really taught me how to consider others. It taught me how to be present, like you were saying, in the act itself. How can I be present and be part of something that's going on rather than, just aiming to get what I want? Mm-hmm. And so I explored all those old places sober. I went back to Palm Springs and explored that sober. And what I found out was really like a lot of it wasn't really appealing. Some of it was very appealing. And then what also started happening right at the beginning was I had to redefine my fantasies, because there were some definite fantasies of the down and dirty, get high sex. And I had to figure out what was going on there, because when I engaged in those, it made me a lot closer to using. And I knew it. I felt it in me. And I could have easily denied that, but I talked about it. I told someone else. And they were like, well, you may want to re-explore what fantasy you're having while you're jerking off. You know what I mean? Like that's important. It's important what I'm putting through my mind. Because what I found out was that, and this I found out sort of independently, was that when I am having a sexual fantasy and I'm fantasizing about drugs or drug sex, I'm reinforcing it in my mind. And I'm firing off the same neurons that are fired when I'm having drug sex. And so my brain is like, oh, well, I want that, and I want it more. And I'm saying, oh, it's desirable because I'm obviously jerking off to it, right? So I'm telling my brain that that's desirable. I'm reinforcing the neural pathways that are going. So my boss was like, well, you're going to have to explore some other fantasies. So we wrote down a list of what my fantasies were. And it's like, well, okay, that one's off the table because I know what it's doing. But I have this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. And I got to explore a bunch of other fantasies that weren't leading me, because I knew if it was pointing me towards getting loaded, right? I knew in my mind if that fantasy was sort of eking me over there, and I had to sort of redefine it and figure out if it would work for me or not. And it was like 4 or 5 years into recovery before I was even thought I was remotely ready to have a relationship. And in between, I discovered more about myself as a sexual man. I became more of a top too, and I was always versatile, but it was just sort of like I got to find out what was really true for me, and what and I explored all kinds of things. I went to some little conventions and things like that, and had fun, but also, made sure I had someone sober with me. Made sure I had someone who was right there to check in with. Because what I also found was that I went back to old habits. I would get into a sexual arena or a sexual space, and I would get into that obsessive mode. And it would be just me, sort of tunnel vision. I want to get what I want. You know what I mean? And I didn't like that about myself. And I didn't like it when I did it. And even in a bar, when you get in a bar and you're sort of in that, sort of like looking around, sort of I didn't like that feeling. And so I took sober people with me, because I don't like, being in a place doing something that it doesn't work for me. And today, when something's not working for me, I switch, I change. I know when something's not working for me. It used to be, if it wasn't working for me, it's like, I'm going to make it work for me. I'm going to make this drug work for me. I'm going to make this situation work for me. I'm going to, and what it ended up happening is that I would, pass out on GHB, or I'd, 5 days later, be walking back to LA from Palm Springs. Just unintended consequences. And the thing is that I know I can't put a drug in me today, because I don't want to have unintended consequences. I also like waking up in the morning, and I like eating, and I like being able to know that I'm not going to piss you off tomorrow because of something that I don't have any control over. And I also want to know that I'm not going to steal your car, and I want to know that I'm not going to, do something that's going to ruin a relationship today. And for all those reasons and many more, I just want, and just for my own soul too, my own spiritual well-being, I want to find a way to be who I am naturally, to be who I am in a way that's, following some principle. And we as addicts need principles in our lives. I need principles in my life. I need these sort of guiding ideas that are going to keep me from veering off into unhealthy stuff for myself, or unhealthy stuff for my relationships, or even unhealthy stuff for the earth. It's like everything's connected, and it's all, I keep those things in line by being able to follow ideas, principles, values, right? And they don't have to be the religious values, they don't have to be George Bush's values or Barack Obama, these are my own personal steadfast values that keep me guiding towards a healthy life, right? So I did all that exploration, and about 4 or 5 years in, I met someone, and we decided to get into a relationship. And it was a really sweet relationship. It was a long distance relationship, so it really had some curves to it that probably weren't going to be, worked out. But at the time, it was probably good for me, because it's about the best I could do. It was a long term. It was exciting when we were together, and and when we were apart. It was like, and the thing was that we were also exploring, well, how do we, have an open sexual relationship, right? And so when we would get together, we would go and we'd have relationships with other people, while we were on vacation, or, and that worked to some extent, and sometimes it was awkward, and I was trying to figure out, does that work for me? Is that something I want? And I didn't have any negative feeling towards it, but when that relationship ended, what I did realize was that I could be in a relationship. That was big news for me. That was like headlines. I can actually be in a relationship. Like, I'm not like stuck being like a serial, trick. It was like I can actually be with someone, have a decent interpersonal relationship with them, and talk and be vulnerable, and and if it means sexually we explore other things, we do that. But that was the headline for me that day, and so we parted ways, and a couple of years later, I got into another relationship, and this time, this person wouldn't have been interested in having other people in a relationship and exploring sexually with other people. And at first, I was not quite with that, because the truth is that I'd never known that. I'd never known a monogamous relationship. And what I realized was that I had these limiting beliefs, right? Like this, I had actually just sort of kept myself from that, because I just never felt like I could do it, or maybe I just felt like it was something I didn't want, or I judged monogamous relationships. But being sober man today, I have to keep an open mind, and I have to sort of let myself be guided by like what I know to be true, and that's that, there's nothing in my experience that I've openly sort of accepted as, non-harmful that I couldn't find some joy in. So I said, well, yeah, let's start this relationship, and so we did. And lo and behold, like crazy, like I can have sex with one person for more than 2 years, right? And like only that person. Like I didn't even think that was possible. Because I thought, and I was, I trained myself to just go after the most exciting sex, go after the most nasty sex, go after, you know what I mean? Like, it was like, that was my thing, and to sort of just have, sex with one person in the bed. Like, it was new. And, but what I found was my dick responded. Like, I was shocked. I was scared, actually. And it was funny, the times I was most scared of that happening is when it happened. And then when I finally just sort of like said, well, I'm just going to listen to my body and sort of like just be present and want to be with this man who I love and be present in this room. And it worked, and that was really sort of the next headline, the next aha moment. Was that, like, I'll tell you, like, whenever sort of it ran out with someone, I ran out. You know what I mean? Like, that was just how I operated. And I found out that I didn't have to do it. Like, I could actually be sexually excited by someone on a daily basis for a long time. And that's new. I'm not saying that I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with this relationship, and I'm not putting down anything else, but this is where I'm at. And I'm happy to be in a place where I can be somewhere honestly and not be harboring sort of, I need to get out of this to get something else. You know what I mean? Like, that's really the beauty of this, is that, like, I'm genuinely there and genuinely happy to be there, and not, caught up in a lot of the stuff that I was caught up in before. But to get there, I really did have to sort of explore a lot of sexual stuff. And for me, and everyone's experience is so totally different, and I love that my experience doesn't oppress your experience, right? So, but my experience was that when I would get on apps, that I would get obsessive, and I didn't like that feeling. And I'm sure there was some way I could have learned how not to, but for me it was just so difficult not to get into like 5 hours at a stretch, like working on this app, trying to perfect how I looked and trying to perfect what I said, and that's my obsessive thinking that got in the way of that. And so I had to really look at, well, where's my ego in that? Where was my excessive thinking in that? And where was my inability to say, hey, maybe this doesn't work for me. Maybe I can find people in other ways, right? Because the truth was getting on the internet and looking for sex was how I did it when I got loaded. And I knew that I could find a new way to do that wasn't about getting loaded, but I couldn't find a way to do it that wasn't obsessive. And so for me, it just didn't have the appeal that it has, and the utility that it has for some people. And it is a great way to meet people and find sober sexual partners, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. It's just, for me, it was too difficult to get past that. That sort of, the same thing I was talking about where I, go to places and just sort of zone out and get tunnel vision. But that's just me, and I don't know what in me like triggers that, but I know that I can have a much better experience, in other arenas. But I had to find out what works for me. Right? And I had to do that not based on people saying, oh, that's bad, or, oh, you can't get on those apps. And I had to actually get on the apps to find out that I didn't want to be on the apps. You know what I mean? Like, and that's okay. And as long as I had my sponsor there to say, well, are you being selfish or self-centered? Well, in a way, I remember I went to Florida on vacation and I got on the app while I was there, and my poor mom was like trying to like have a great vacation with me, and I was like, and I remember one time she was like, Dale, are you paying attention? We were walking through Target or something, and I was like, And then I hooked up with someone, and I found myself being dishonest with them about my HIV status and things like that. And I thought, this is not how I want to be. And so, I had to come back and do an inventory around that and figure out what was going on with me that I couldn't be honest man in my sexual relationship, because I always am now. But you know, I just sort of, like I said, that obsessive quality for me. When I get too obsessed, I start sort of letting go of my values. I start, you know, and I've got to pull myself back from that obsessive brink. And then so I did some work around that and tried to figure out what was going on. And it really means being honest. It really just means, you know, divorcing my ego, letting go of my need to, you know, get what I want at any cost, and really just be present and be honest with the people who I'm interacting with. And more than just on an app, like that helped me in so many ways, you know, to learn how to be honest and to be forthright. And you know, and then the sexual, what's the time? The sexual.
You're good.
And even through this whole process too, like learning how to not sexually, you know, just sort of be caught in a sexual mode all the time, right? Like I found that I would be sort of going through my day and judging people sexually, like, oh, you know, they're hot or not, or they're, you know, and ignoring the rest of the world. Like I was just this laser beam desire to, you know, to just you know, categorize everyone, whether they would make me hot or, you know, make my dick hard or not. You know what I mean? Like, and then I realized that, oh, I'm really sort of not being open to their humanity. I'm not being open to, not just the people I'm you know, looking at, but the people I'm not looking at. Like, I'm missing half of humanity. And so I had to sort of bring myself back from that sort of sexual obsession too. And you know, for me, I just sort of chalked that up to a lot of the ways that crystal meth addiction really just sort of trained my brain to do these things that now I gotta sort of undo. And in the process, you know, have healthy, honest relationships and to be okay with me. And so, you know, this relationship I'm in now, you know what, it's uncharted territory, let me tell you, because, you know, when I'm having to sort of actually be in a relationship and, you know, not make it all about me, which is not easy, you know, I'm constantly thinking I'm failing, or I'm constantly thinking that maybe this relationship isn't the relationship, or maybe I should, you know, and then I come back to, oh yeah, you know, I've put myself with another person. You know, all the things that don't bother me may bother someone else, you know? It's like, I had to figure out, like, how do I sort of be honest and be myself, but yet also consider someone else. And so it's been a really important test to how do I think of others? How do I make sure that I'm not just caught up in the Dale train and you know, maybe trying to be a little more, you know, less self-important, you know. So, and the other thing I would say about relationships is I really had to look at my fears, because fear is such a subtle driver of the way I behave and the way I act and the things I believe. And I really had to do thorough fear lists because you know, there'll be a subtle fear in me that will drive me to let go of a relationship or to avoid a person, or to, you know, to not listen to my intuitive voice, you know, and I had to find out what those fears were. And like you, there was a lot of I'm not good enough, and there was a lot of people don't like me, and a lot of, you know, just the other stuff that was just sort of living in the back of my head that was like a computer program sort of informing what I did. And I didn't even know what those things were. I didn't even know what those beliefs that were sitting back there telling me, oh, no, you better not do that, or, uh-oh, now they're going to know, or, you know what I mean? Like, now everyone's going to see you're a monster, you know, it's like, you know, and I didn't know what those thoughts were until I saw the fears, because the fears give away the beliefs. Yeah. You know, when I have the fear, when I have this physical manifestation of a fear, it means something's been threatened. And so I had to look, well, what's been threatened, you know? And a lot of times I had used fear, you know, of not being good enough as a way to get out of a relationship or get out of an interaction with someone. because it's easier to get out quick than to try to figure out what was going on and what I needed to do, and not to hate myself. Because at the bottom of a lot of that was self-hate, because I didn't know how to love myself. I didn't know how to be gentle with myself. And a lot of this exploration has been just be gentle with myself, just really be hard on my disease, because my disease is cunning and it will try to surface, but to also just be gentle with myself and allow myself to make mistakes, allow myself to not do things perfectly, allow myself to be present and to be, sometimes not on track, to find out what I do need to do to get on track. Because like I said, when I have these principles and values now, I didn't always have them. And as I sort of acquired them, I could use them as a guiding star to keep me on track. And I would get off track and I'd be like, oh wait, I'm supposed to be compassionate instead of judgmental. So I'd get back to compassion. You know what I mean? And any number of values that sort of bring me back to center. And so the journey, I want to say for anyone, really has to be about what works for you. And not in a sort of cherry picking what works for you sort of way, but what really what really will bring you to a place of healthy self-love. What works for you to bring you to a place where you can actually love yourself. And how can you sort of be a person who loves himself in a world that's constantly making you question yourself. And I've sort of found a balance, which I'm really grateful for. So thanks for letting me speak.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you, Dale. And now we have Mr. Eddie. Yes. I'll hold it for you if you want. Princess.
Hi, my name is Eddie, and I'm a grateful addict. Hey, Eddie. So I have 11 years clean. So, which is by the grace of God, because when I was out running and gunning, when I first got clean, people were like, no. So just by the fact that I'm here at 11 years clean, and I can look back and be like, this shit is hard. I mean, and not staying clean part, sometimes the living part is hard, and it's really kind of a miracle. But so, how I kind of started out my life really, I was very sexualized as a kid. I was born of very liberal parents. They were like, we need to let our children pick their own religion because it was forced on us. And, it was the 70s. They were very young people, and so they really wanted my sister and I to make our own choices, which some of that, through my step work, I found was really good, and some of it was really bad. So, but, whatever. They did the best they could. So, instead of fighting, I would wake up in the middle of the night and hear my parents fucking, and I was like, okay, whatever, they're not fighting. So I was in a household of that nature, when they got HBO, I could hear them watching, when HBO was first out, they put a lot of racy movies on there. So, I'd get up and I'd go into the hallway and I'd look, I'm like, now what are they watching? Oh, people are having sex. It's nice. Awesome. For my 12th birthday, my parents bought me a subscription to Playboy magazine because they were like, he's getting older. He's given his own floor. Things like that. So I was, like I said, I was very sexualized growing up, but I didn't ever look at it in a bad way until my dad was killed when I was 12. And then my mom took up with a lot of really fun, funny, strange people who kind of blew a lot of that for me. But my sister and I were old enough to know this is not good. So once we can get the hell out of here, we're leaving. So, we got through that. So when I'm moving forward into my adult life, I had my first joint bite when I was 10. I had my first line of meth at 15. And then I did some cocaine, and then I went back to meth. That was that cocaine shit's for children. I was like, this shit first. And, and by the time I was 21, I was tired of drinking. But it didn't get to dire straits until the very end. I put 20 years of using and drinking in. And I used and drank through my whole entire career. I had a very lucrative career as an actor, dancer, model, etc. And, through step work, I really had to do really hard work on that, because when I first got clean, I walked through like the shame of what have I done, what has my life been, and my sponsor was like, no, don't get all crazy on yourself. You did very well with what you did. You traveled the world, you met a lot of really cool people, you got to party with a lot of famous people and fun people, and so, go backwards and review it a little bit, and almost celebrate it a little bit. Yeah, you fucked up and you got addicted to drugs. You spent over $1 million on dope. You kept waking up. That's the joke. I tell people, I kept waking up. We all try to tell ourselves we secretly wanted to kill ourselves, really, or some of us walk through that. And the joke for me is I kept waking up. My friends were like, "You don't get to make that decision. Only God gets to make that decision." I'm like, "But why can't I just die and be, part of the 27 Club, like Jim Morrison, and Janis Joplin? Then I'll be immortal, and then I won't have to pay bills anymore, and it'll all be good." My way of thinking got really twisted. But I also bought into the whole Hollywood LA scene because I was in it, and I was with people that were doing that. So that's what you did. You just bought into it. And so, I didn't. I got clean because I got arrested. I was institutionalized first, and I was like, okay, well, we'll get clean a little bit. So, I went away for a while, which is what people do. And, that didn't take. So, when I got arrested, I was like, oh, yeah, there's only one option left, it's the death thing. And I'm way too self-centered to die. People need me in this world. I need me in this world. So that's really when I had to go into recovery, and I knew who to call, and I jumped into the program like head first. So going into that, as far as relationships go, when Nika's asked me to speak about relationships, my first thing was like, I don't know anything about relationships. My God, I was like a sex worker for so many years. I'm like, wait a minute, I had relationships while I was doing that. And they were all very valid. When I first, I met my first husband at the Campus Theater in San Francisco when I was headlining there. And, Rick and I grew up 6 streets apart. We knew each other for years. And then I re-met him at the campus. And then I moved back down here. And then I was like, well, there's nobody really here that's, wants to be a husband. So I'm going to import, from my hometown. And Rick and I started dating. And I was on a movie. I was in a movie that played at the Castro Theater. It was like an art house movie. So it was like a normal movie. And I remember him calling me and congratulating him. He was congratulating me to say, I'm glad, you pulled through, blah, 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 whatever. And I was like, oh, you want to go to dinner? So we kind of started dating, and then, and I really bought into this, like I always kind of I suggest to some people or some young, gay men that want to get married and they're in their 20s and they're twinkling and they're just like, oh my God. And I think it's great because it's romantic and it's fun and it's awesome to watch and it's great to help them out. But I always kind of try to tell them, now this is not a Princess Diana and Prince Charles thing, is it? And they're like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, I have a story for you. When Rick and I were first dating, it was very, I'm not going to say unrealistic because the flying to different cities was realistic, all the fancy hotels were realistic. I mean, we were both very lucky people to be able to jet set everywhere while we were dating. So when he came here and we got married, we had a wedding we couldn't live up to. There was all these preconceived notions that both of us had in our minds about how this was going to go down. And it all went south, it just all didn't go well, and we were divorced, 18 months later. So there was the starter marriage, the starter relationship, and through my step work and now, that was years ago. God, that was almost 20 years ago. So what I learned about that one was, we both bought into the heteronormative. We got real stuck in that, and we're guys. There was no women in this marriage. There were guys in this marriage, and so the minute one of us took, that more submissive female thing, the other one, it was turned off by it. That's just the way it went down, and so I kind of had to learn from that. We're not marrying women that are going to cook and clean for us. We're marrying guys. So for me, that's kind of like how I had to chalk. Well, that failed. Well, that failed. Or that was one of the reasons that failed because the other strays, and then it leads to all the fighting and all the jealousies and all this stuff and possessiveness, and it just gets really ugly from there. So I'll tell you, about 6 months after my divorce, I met this couple, and it was Tom and Brad, and I met them through the internet, and I was like, I want to I was a dancer at Rage at the time, and I was like, I want to get laid before I go to work. So I went to their apartment in Hancock Park, and I met them, and they were pretty amazing. They were really nice. They were very kind. They were real fun. They were hot. But when I went to leave, Tom Armstrong started to cry. We all did a little bit of drugs, and I will tell you that I was not sober during this part of when I walked into the situation. And Tom started to cry, and me and Brad had to calm him down. And I'm like, look, I'm gonna leave my jacket here, and I'm gonna come back, I swear. And I went to work thinking, okay, that was weird, but that was actually kind of sweet. Because I was embittered by the end of my marriage. I loved Rick, and I was really heartbroken over that. And I'll tell you, during my 20s, I looked, 17 constantly. So I was always placed in adult situations that I was in no way emotionally ready to handle. But I had to handle it because, you're pretty, you can do it. Everyone's all like, just get through it, it's fine. Just do this and say that and walk this and do that, you'll be fine. And it was only through my step work and through the program that I realized, well, I kind of wasn't fine. I got through it. And I could write about it, but I wasn't fine, but I just continued to kind of walk through life like that. So coming out of this, marriage with Rick and meeting Tom and Brad, they were together for like 12 years. So, I went back and I spent the night with them and blah, 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 and sobered up with them because, I didn't have a regular job then, I was entertainment. So, but I will say meeting those two, they changed my life. And even though I was still, all three of us, they were weekend warriors. So they would use on the weekends and I would use them when I got home. So, and even though putting that aside, they asked me questions, have you been married? Have you ever had a relationship? And I would ask them questions like, how do you guys do this? Like, how do you like invite in? And it wasn't just me, like, every weekend they'd be like, hey, Peanut, they'd call me Peanut. I had a nickname all of a sudden, and then they're like, will you go to Palm Springs with us and be our little boyfriend? So at first I was like, okay, this is just like work. Yeah. This is just like work. But I had to admit to myself after a while, I like these two people. They're really nice. And then, slowly but surely they actually, loved me. And so I was like, and I was used to it but afraid of it because I was bitter about the first one. So I was kind of like, am I experiencing like a polyamorous relationship? And at first I didn't know what that word meant. I didn't even know that word then. Over time I was all like, wow, like when I was doing my step work and I had to do all my inventory, I was like, I'm a pretty lucky guy, to have stayed alive and know that I've gotten to do all this really cool stuff. And high or not, I got to be a part of people's lives in a very dynamic and ironic kind of way. So mine and Tom and Brad's relationship lasted for like 4 years. We had great times. We would go skiing. We would go to Palm Springs. We would go to Magic Mountain. We would hang out. We would get high. We would throw amazing sex parties. These two guys were crazy. And again, I would be like, how do you two do this? There were times where I would just watch them interact with people and then with each other. Like I was really fascinated by how they did this. And Tom and Brad sat me down one time and they said, Eddie, Tom and I we don't own each other. Like it opened my eyes. They were like, everybody wants to own each other. And, we're not straight people. We're guys. And they said, the first mistake, and this was them talking, we feel people make. And of course they were like beaming out my first marriage. Like, it was like they knew me then. And I was all like, okay, yeah, I totally get that. So, they both fascinated me how they were able to love each other and then they were able to love me and I was able to love them individually and hang out with them. And, the tragic end of that is the drugs pretty much got, the better of Brad. Brad was bipolar and Brad got laid off from his job. So his insurance got canceled. So the bipolar set in and he was really good at like lying about it because we were always like, are you okay? Is everything good? Blah, blah, blah. And Brad went to Palm Springs and put a gun in his mouth and blew his brains out. So that hurt. That hurt. So me and Tom are sitting here trying to deal with that. We had to drive to Palm Springs and clean up part of the mess. And of course, this is what a dope fiend I was. We're in Brad's apartment because Brad was writing 2 movies and Hollywood told him, water these movies down. And I'm not kidding you. America's not smart enough for this, which we were all blown away by being told this. Go to Palm Springs, rewrite them, split them in half, water them down a bit, and then bring them back to us. And we'll see what we can do. Brad was supposed to go to Palm Springs and rest and clean up and do this. He told everybody, he was fine. Tom and I moved on with life here. And so when that happened, we were both like, what? I came home from New Orleans, bombed out of my brains from Southern Decadence to this news. So like, even though I wasn't sober, I ran into a lot of sobering moments. So we had to go to Palm Springs and help clean up this mess. And like a dope fiend, the whole apartment was just ransacked. I don't think I'd ever seen anything like this in my life ever. I'd never seen an apartment look like this. And I was like, wow, what the hell happened in here? So of course, the one thing I see on the dishwasher was a little thing of friggin', and I was like, boop, put it in my bag. So, Tom and I are on our way home, and I'm like, want some? And Tom rolled his eyes. He's like, Peanut, if Brad wanted anybody to have the last of his stash, it was you. So, and I'm not glamorizing drug use. I'm just telling you how this all went down. So, but anyway, that's my alarm, sorry. So anyway, there was a lot of, but even in those moments, like Tom and I had good times, we cried together. We really didn't know what to do with each other because he was actually with another guy. Tom ran the deal by me, and I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I just want to keep things the way they are. So he's like, well, now I want to traditionally marry another man, and I was like, go do it. So he went and did it, and he seemed happy. And then they broke up, and then this was all in the form of like maybe 2 or 3 years, and then. Tom and I started to get close again, and then Tom died. He died of a heart attack that hit him so hard. He was having sex with another guy, and I already got clean. I'd gotten busted, and I told Tom I got in trouble. He was like, well, I think your show is over, Eddie. And that's when I knew I was over, and I got clean, so we didn't see each other for a while, because Tom was working, I was getting clean, and I was working. And I got a phone call one morning. I was 2 months from hitting my first year, and we'd planned a party. Tom was like, I love that you're getting clean. This is really good for you, blah, blah, blah. We'll have a party at my house. 2 months from the time I was going to turn 1, I got this phone call, and they said, Tom died having sex with another guy. And I'll tell you, that was a really bizarre kind of pain, because there was no crying at first, because all I could think about was the conversation Tom and I used to have about how we wanted to go, and that's how we wanted to go. So, so I was like, how do you react to that? It's taken me years to let that go in bits and pieces, and I miss both of them because they taught me a lot. They taught me about writing. They introduced me to a lot of really fun people because they went to Hollywood, and they had a very racy life, but they were very good guys, and they sort of introduced me to a more mature relationship, if I was to choose to have one with another man. And they helped me through all of that. They helped me grow up a little bit. So all the relationships that I've had after that, have been more honest. I didn't have any more relationships. I moved to the desert. I was like, man, I need to rest. Emotionally, I was a little spent. And so I just did step work, got a little job. It was not a great job, but it was something that kept me out of trouble. I did my step work. I really took a lot of time to try to get to know me. And I, bought a bike, and then the bike turned into driving to work, and I wanted to save money on gas, and then it turned into a riding club, and then the riding club was like, we're AIDS life cycle people, and I'm like, what's that? So they're like, well, we, do this thing for charity, and my sponsor was like, that'll be really good for you, and so that kind of morphed into the AIDS ride. So, and then my ex and I started talking again, like he kept calling me, and so I didn't feel forced into like having it out with him, but I told my sponsor, I said, what is that all about? He's like, well, get in it and find out. I had a very liberal sponsor. The first time I heard Perry speak, he said he lived naked in a treehouse in the 60s, and he was a psychology major. I was like, I want him for my sponsor. Because I could relate. We were both liberal individuals, and he was a psychology major, so that would help. It helps when they're psychology majors, and they help you with step work. So, he was really clear about things. He was very adamant about all my chores and my assignments. And so, and he helped walk me through a lot of conservativeness, and I had some shame I had to walk through about, again, what have I done? What did I do? I didn't say, all this gobbledygook we walk through. And so when I was done with the ride, I ran into Jason. I'd see Jason at meetings, and I was committed out in the desert, and so I would see Jason, and the meeting would be over, and I would get bombarded by people, and he would be gone. So I was done with the ride. This is when I learned, like, when you do really good things for society, like really good things come back to you. This is like the lesson I learned with that. So the NA convention in the desert was like 2 days after the ride. So after the ride was over, I saw Jason hospitality, and I was like, oh yeah, there's that guy. you know. And I mean, I'd been training for 7 months and gone on this very, very exhilarating ride that has your endorphins moving, you know, for 7 whole days. And, you know, I was like, I'm going to have that guy in 72 hours. It's going to happen. In 72 hours, I had him. And for 6 months, we dated. But in that 6 months, I could see Jason wanted to pull us into that conservative, traditional. I was like, I'm not doing reg again, you know. And I'll tell you what, the hardest thing I ever had to do in being clean at that time was to sit Jason down after 6 months and go, you know what, boo, I think you're amazing, but I don't want to do this. You know, we're not going to Cartier to buy rings. We're not getting married. You know, I tried this whole, you know, I'm like Madonna, no conventionality. You know, I haven't had a lot of conventionality in my life, so why would I have conventional relationships? And that was really tough for me. Like he left the apartment. I was like, oh my God, I was shaking. Because it was the first time like you know, instead of just running or finding a reason that some bullshit reason we're gonna believe to justify leaving, I had to just say it. And I had to own it. And so, and when he left, I got online and I was like, God, I want to get laid from a different guy. And I mean, I had to own that. And it had nothing to do with any sort of weird baggage or anything. I'm that guy. Like, you know, it was scary and I knew I hurt his feelings, but I was like, I need to be free. You know, I just have to be free. And like I said, and that's why I kind of talked about kind of my upbringing a little bit. My parents' view on sex was very liberal. You know, my mom, you know, my dad was like, you know, I asked my mom, I said, you know, why didn't you buy me that Playboy subscription? She said, you know, before we knew you were gay, you know, I just wanted you to see women in a very beautiful light. And, you know, Playboy does a very good job, and you're a beautiful boy. I mean, this is my mother telling me this stuff. And of course, I told my mom, I said, well, Mom, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but when I saw those women in those pretty costumes, I'm going to be those women. And I was, right? All over the world. So, she had a good laugh when I told her that later, in later years. So like, it was just a lot of that. And in my step work, and I keep reverting back to my step work because step work to me is like the most amazing source for program, because whether it's a good or bad thing, or if you're going to judge it, go back and do some step work over it. And then you find out, is this really me or is this not really me? Was this about the drugs, or is this my blueprint? So I had to really be okay with the fact that, you know, my views are kind of liberal. I mean, there's a few conservative stuff in there, which is like really kind of weird, but it makes me different, so whatever. But for the most part, like, you know, I just have liberal views. You know, I told my sister, she's a right-wing Republican, very wealthy. You know, and her youngest daughter, she's like, Cassie just doesn't want to put her clothes on. I'm like, well, when she's on the pole, you send her to Uncle Eddie's house, and I'll let her know what the possible outcomes of that life is going to be. You're going to have to let her make her own choice and love her anyway, kind of thing, right? So my sister hates that. She always hangs up on me. So, but I mean, just my upbringing, my provocative job choices in my 20s, how people reacted to me sexually all the time. You know, I had to consider all that when I was doing my step work. I had to consider, you know, all of those things. And because I just didn't want to chalk up my life as this one big waste. You know, I refuse to believe that. None of our lives are a waste. None of them. And, you know, we can try to throw things away all the time, but we're going to come back. And like a poltergeist, that piece of paper is going to unfold itself somehow. And you're going to be like, I thought I threw that shit away. And it's going to be like, you can't. This is who you are. So that's what I've learned how to do. And like I said, you know, when I told Jason, you know, I can't do this the way you want to do it. You know, and he walked out, and, you know, it was suck. He was so hot. Like, he used to come over to my house, like, unannounced with no shirt on. He used to call all the time without me even having to ask. So he was just an amazing guy, very sweet. There were times where I'm like, how did I get that one? But I will say this. He walked back in the front door, and he sat down, and he goes, okay, we're not doing this. We're not just going to, like, end this. And that's when I was like, oh, shit, what are we going to do? What am I going to do? This is not how the episodes end. Okay? It's my show. When I write, it ends differently. So, till this day, we are best friends. Like, I had to learn how to be okay with telling him, I'm going to get late in 5 minutes, so you can't come over. You know what I mean? And be okay with that, and not be all, like, weird and scared, and be like, oh, what if I hurt his feelings? I had to be like, you know, so what if he hurt his feelings? He's a big boy, he'll get over it. And vice versa. You know, there were things that Jason was learning about my lifestyle and about the way that I think, and turned a couple things around on me, and I had some shit to learn too. I was all like, oh, well. So, So, and like I said, to this day, we were best friends. And, you know, as far as like, I can't even say it. Like, I'm doing it, but I can't. Polyamorous. You know, I looked it up because I was like, I think I've done that. And it's like, it just says more, it says more than one or more than two. And, you know, I'm having them now. You know, I've got Jason in the desert. I've got my ex-husband in West Hollywood, because we still do things that will catch ourselves, you know, in love. We're not in love with each other, but we'll he's like, go to this wedding with me, blah, 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 blah. I have to network with some people, and because he still does the AIDS ride, and you know, he meets with people that donate a lot of money to his things, and he likes me to go with him sometimes. And we went to this wedding, and somehow, you know, I had my hand on the small of his back, and there we are on the dance floor, and everyone was like, who's that? Who's that guy with Eddie? Is that your new boyfriend? I'm like, no, it's my ex-husband. So it's kind of like, no matter whether they're ex or they're not, you know, I still, you know, love these men. These are my friends. These are my family. So, you know, I've got Rick in West Hollywood. We're not boyfriends. There's no way that's ever going to happen. However, I stopped trying to 12-step those kind of moments. I just chalk them up as, Eddie, you're a lucky son of a bitch to have men in your life that love you unconditionally. You know, that aren't putting any rules on you, and they don't want to own you, and they know you don't. I don't believe in ownership. It's just my opinion. I think a lot of like people where they fuck that up is they accidentally want to own you, and vice versa. And then they're like, I don't know what happened. It's like, well, did you question this person to death about where he is and where you've been, and did you do this and get all crazy and jealous and envious? And it's like, but guess what? That has nothing to do with your husband, honey. That's on you.
Yeah.
You got to explore that. And you know, life. If you love who you are, you're not going to care what they're doing. And it's my opinion, as far as gay relationships go, when you get mad because your honey came home and he got laid, you're just pissed off because he fell over the bushes and didn't put him in his pocket and bring him home with you. Because I asked that about when Tom and Brad were alive. I'm like, what happens when Tom hits the vows on his way home? I go, Brad, don't you get mad? He goes, only when he doesn't bring him home for me. And I was like, oh my God, I mean, they were blowing my brains out. Like you know, it was pretty amazing. And then I went to Australia 2 years ago, and the couple that I stayed with were the same way. Like they lived in this $1 billion penthouse, and I slept on the floor, which I thought was kind of cool. And I woke up in the morning, and one of them came through the front door. It was like 6:30 in the morning, and I said, morning jog, and he goes, group scene. And I was all, and then he goes to another room, and Michael comes out, and I was like, oh, I gotta have a conversation about this one, because I mean, I'm fascinated by people that can do this, because to me, that is the ultimate love. To me, you know, I'm not a big fan of selfish love. Some people are, but that's not me. That's not who I am. You know, you have to let people just go and do what they need to go do, and trust that they're going to come back. And most of the time, they always do. It's, to me, for me, when I started picking, it just fucked it all up. It just ruined everything. So I talked to Michael and Alan about it. They said the same exact thing, and that was almost like very. That kind of sealed the deal for me. I'm just like, hey, well, then that is real. That isn't just some weird, bizarre, like, you know, cult that Tom and Brad decided to make up on their own. Like, it's an actual belief system that some people have. So anyway, so I've got, you know, Rick and WeHo, and I've got Jason in the desert, and I'm actually like dating this guy, like for real, you know, in Newport Beach. You know, we go paddleboarding and we do things and we go places, and I still go and I still play and do things, and he doesn't seem to really care, you know. And I always tease him, you know, like he's in San Francisco right now at some family reunion. He's like, yeah, I hung out with a friend, and he had the word hung, and I'm like, hung? I'm like, go honey, go. Tell me all about it. Call me on the phone tomorrow and tell me all about it. He was like, no. And I'm always teasing him all the time. I'm like, look, dude, you're a guy. This is what men do. This is what they do. But for me, I'm not going to lie about it. I'm not apologizing for it. You know, I'm just going to be Eddie. And so, because for me, that's kind of like what happened to me when I was in entertainment. I kind of lost sight of who I was. You know, I did the name change and all that stuff. And for me, recovery has been just trying to find me. The good, the bad, the slutty, the little whore, all of that, you know, all of it. And love every single bit of it. And a really good friend of mine, paid me a really good compliment the other day. He was my upstairs neighbor, and he's like, you know, Eddie, what I really like about you is you like who you are. You don't really apologize for much. I mean, I do if I, you know, fuck you up or I harm people in some way. I mean, we have to do that. It's in the step work. Those are the rules. But he's like, in general, you just kind of dig who you are. And I said, well, but isn't that what we're all supposed to be doing in this program? We're supposed to find who we are, all of it, and love every bit of it. and keep it shiny and keep our shit clean and try to do the best of our ability and make good decisions, you know, like, so, you know, I've had the Tiffany's relationship and I've had the polyamorous relationships. I think that's what I'm having now because I'm having more than 2 right now. They're just different. You know, they're with people, all of them. I've slept with everybody that I'm really close to. I mean, I try to get close to the new people I sleep with. That's really hard here. But anyway, so that's kind of like how I do it. You know, I feel really blessed to have the men in my life that I have, and I really don't. I'm not interested in changing it much. You know, if God wants me to add another guy to my life, He's gonna put one in that's gonna fit. So I mean, that's kind of like how I do it. And that's it. I really appreciate you letting me share it. You're awesome. And that's all I got. Thanks.
All right, so let's take a 15-minute break. They got snacks and stuff upstairs, and we'll come back and return.
Awesome.